All right, hello everybody. Today we are going to go over the new feature, the planning project. It was recently taken out of beta and put into labs. So my agenda for today is to just go over how to activate that lab if you want to use the planning project, and then we're going to go through. I'll just show you where the help guide article is, which is what we're looking at right here. And then I'm going to show you how to create a planning project, the setup of the planning project, and then some of the functionalities in the planning project. Also, we'll show you, how to, again, how to navigate to the, again, the other pages it affects, like the staff schedule screen and the Creative Today page. One of the things I'll do is, as we're going through our planning project is, once I finish with an area, I will stop and ask if you have any questions. Obviously, we're not going to be talking to each other, but I have the chat feature. I'm only currently viewing the chat in Zoom, so I don't really see if somebody raises their hand or uses, I think there's another, area in Zoom that you can talk. So if you would pose your questions into the chat, I'm not going to stop and answer them immediately, but I will stop at the end of each section, double check to see if there's any questions or ask if there are any questions going on in that. So that's kind of the agenda for today. We're going to create a planning project, set up, a new one, look at it, how it affects the system and everything like that. So again, the idea of the planning project, I should probably start with that for anybody who wants to know. And you can see this, I have the help guide pulled up for the planning project, which, just so you all know, the help guide is a work in process currently, just for the simple fact that, we're still adding and adjusting some features with the planning project. The more feedback we get from people who are using it, the changes that we'll be making. So just keep that in mind. It's a work in progress at this point in time. But the idea of this is just to easily plan out, as it says, your year-long client commitments, in weekly allocations of work. So what we've done in the past is we've had retainers, where a retainer, you could say, fine, I'm going to bill you $5,000 a month. But what we really wanted to come up with was the ability for you to, instead of doing it by dollars, to say by hours. This is what we're committing to, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, hours wise versus just the dollars. And of course, those hours can translate to dollars. So that was the idea of the planning project. So when you go to the help guide, you can type in the search planning project or planning, and you'll find this help guide article here, which will, give you a basic rundown of the planning project. Now I have on here, just for those of you who do not have the planning project enabled, you'll see here on this one, if you go to your admin manager system setup under your Workamajig labs, you'll see that the planning project is listed here under disabled labs, and you can enable it. Okay, so once you enable it, so what happens sometimes, just so you know, is once you enable it, you might not see the menu item immediately, right? So you'll click on enable and it'll show up here under enabled, and you might go into your menu and you'll look at the menu here and you might not see the planning project immediately. So what you'll need to do with that is you'll need to just click on the show all apps at the bottom, and it will refresh your desktop and it will show the planning project app right here in the desktop. I'll get that word out if I can. So just wanted you to know that, again, you'll enable it and everything is great, but you can't find it. It's there. I promise. You just need to do the show all apps. Of course, the log out and log back in will work also, but we have that little button way down here at the bottom that will allow you to do that. Now, again, you'll notice that this planning project does have its own app, and just like the project dot or app right here, you have the plus sign to create a new planning project, or you can click into it to view any existing ones that you have. One of the things that we've done is some people would like to see the ability to see their regular view of projects and maybe the planning projects incorporated in. So if you go into your regular project dot and you go up to your more system settings, you can set in the project dot to also include planning projects. So they'll still be viewed in the regular dot, but this one will overlay a regular project and a planning project. It'll show them all in the same list if you want to do that here. Okay. But back to our planning project. So I'm going to click the plus sign right here, and we're going to create a new planning project. Now, one of the things I'll just tell you right now, the planning project is a Workamajig project, right? There's some different features to it, and that's what we're going to focus on today. But the basic structure of a planning project is a project, right? So there's, you know, again, some differences to it, which we'll, you know, really focus on, but just don't think that it's going to be a lot different. In fact, you know, it's going to use project numbers. You're going to add a client to it. It has a lot of the same features to it. So we're going to click the plus sign just like we would to create a regular project. And you'll see the first thing that we need to pick, and I'm going to have to move my chat. So if you see my mouse going crazy, that's, I'm just moving that. But you'll see here that I have to pick my client just like I would on a regular project, puts in my contact, right? And I can name it. You know, I'm very creative when it comes to naming my projects. I can type in a project number here if I want, or again, I can allow the system to number my project. Currently, the planning projects do use the project numbering method of the projects, right? It doesn't have a special project numbering method. It's something that we, you know, that we've heard some, you know, grumbling, you know, like saying, hey, it would be nice if they had their own project numbering method, but it hasn't been something that's been a, you know, it's maybe been mentioned, but not something that's been a, we need to have that. So again, it's kind of on our list of things to consider in the future. So if you start using the planning project feature and would like it to have its own numbering method, certainly don't hesitate to email into your account manager, support@workamajig.com, and say, hey, this would be a really big deal for us to have a separate project numbering method. But currently, as it is, you can type in your own project number if you so choose to, or you can allow the system to number it for you. Now, this plan to copy the planning projects, there's no template for this, and you're going to see why in just a minute when I get to the you know, get to the schedule portion of this. What you can do is if you've created a previous planning project, you can copy from that previous planning project into the current planning project. Other than that, you're going to be creating this from scratch, right? You can type in your description. You, of course, have a start date. Now, you'll notice my due date field is required. The idea of the planning project, of course, is that you know, think about that. Is it for 6 months? Is it for 9 months? Is it for a year? Maybe it's just for a quarter, but it needs to have a due date for it to calculate allocations. And again, that'll make more sense when I get to the schedule, but we'll just go out and we'll just say, well, we're just going to do this one for you know, until April 30th. So that's kind of, I'm making my commitment to this client for hours out to that due date right there. And I'm going to hit save. And then we're going to come into this schedule screen right here. So again, this should look extremely familiar to all of you that have created projects before, is that you can see that this looks like a regular project. Couple of differences though. You'll notice that my schedule estimate area is combined. And again, I'm going to show you why. And I don't have, you know, so those are separate. And you know, everything else though down here is kind of the same, except for I have this linked projects menu. That's a little bit different. And again, that's going to become more relevant in just a minute. But other than that, again, a planning project, you can create spec sheets, you can create deliverables, you can have conversations, right? We have a daily feed, we have miscellaneous costs and files and a budget and all of that. All of that is you know, just like a regular project. The biggest difference for this planning project is when I go into the schedule estimate area here, I gotta move my chat again, sorry. Is when I click, I don't have a schedule. I don't have a list of tasks, because the idea of this is we're just resourcing, you know, we're allocating our resources. We're not creating a timeline at this point in time. Our timeline is 2:10 today to 4:30. So this is where I can click to add an assignment, right? So I'm bucketing is really what I'm doing. Now I have options here. When I do this, I can, you know, pick my user and I can add my assignment. And I can do a percentage assigned, meaning it's going to take that date range, which I'm not doing that math at this time, but it's going to take that date range and it's going to, you know, say, okay, it's going to be that 40 hours a week. And it's going, if I say percentage assigned and I say, I'm going to assign them this, in my Yosemite Sam, who does account management, 50% of Yosemite Sam's time is going to be spent on this client, I can just put in that 50 and I can tab out and it's going to calculate my hours per week. Now and you'll notice it calculated 232 hours. Again, I'm not going to do that math for that time frame. The system is doing it for me, which is nice. Another option I have, of course, is if I'm making a commitment of how many hours I'm giving to them, I can insert a row and I can, pick my person right here. And I can say, well, I was going to commit to them 200 hours, right? And again, the system will do the same thing and calculate that information out. Last but not least, I can, insert and add another person, and I can manually bucket, right? So I can say, well, I wanted to commit 10 hours a week, right? I'm not going to do this for the whole entire time, but you get where I'm going on that one, is you can actually just manually bucket that information. So if you know how many hours a week you want to give and you don't want to, figure out the math in the beginning, you can manually go in and save that information there. All right, so I'm going to pause really quick. Of course, I have a lot more to talk about, but I'm just going to pause really quick and ask if anyone has any questions. The chat's been quiet and I'm like wondering if oh, never mind. Somebody chatted. There is not a way to connect the planning project to a campaign at this time. Okay, it's kind of its own. When that question came up before and I passed that question on to the engineers, it was kind of like the idea of the campaign was more the fact that you have, like, this is more of, I'm allocating 10 hours. I don't really know how that 10 hours is going to be used at this time, but I'm allocating the 10 hours. The idea of the campaign is when you're building a campaign and then you're building in like those linked projects and things like that, that you would, you have more of a plan of how they're going to use the hours in that plan. Oh, sorry. I'm reading questions, so forgive me while I pause. In the system setup, if you go to, I'm gonna jump over to that page really quick. So if you go to Admin Manager, System Setup, so let me just walk through it. This is a different system, but you go to Admin Manager, System Setup, under Account Information, Workamajig Labs, you should see the planning project here. If you're on one of Workamajig's servers, right, that's going to be an option for you right there immediately. If you're on one of your own servers, if you don't see that, you need to double check that you're on the most current version. All right, and then let me get back to the questions. Yes, I will talk about billing. I promise I'm going to get to that. So somebody asked that, and I promise I'm going to get there. Somebody asked if this is like allocating time from a template. Well, what this is really, we're, instead of like in a regular project, when we allocate time, we have a timeline, and that timeline has a schedule, and we say, we're going to allocate 10 hours of work to doing the first draft and, to this person and things like that. Really what the planning project is saying is that I'm going to commit some time to this client, right? This is how much time I'm going to commit to this client. I don't exactly know how it's going to be used yet, right? With a template, I have an idea of how it's going to be used, because we say, well, this is for first draft, or this is for them to do design, or this is for them. This is, again, like for those types of projects that maybe we think like web maintenance, or those social media managers, right? Who are going in and they're committing 5 to 10 hours a week to this client to do that. And, and again, we want to set that aside. You cannot convert a planning project into a regular one. A planning project is, even though it's a project per se, it's its own animal, right? So you can, of course, like if there's time put against a planning project, you can transfer time and things like that, but you cannot convert it to a regular project. Okay, and I kind of did just give some scenarios about that. Keep in mind, like, what the idea of the planning project was. Someone was asking about what a scenario of when you would use a planning project versus a normal project. And again, the idea of this is to say, like, think about, what I mentioned in the beginning was we've been told over the years, when we say, oh, that sounds like a retainer, people go, well, I don't actually, say, oh, it's $5,000 a month. I say it's 50 hours a month. Right. And, not 5,000 is 50 hours. And again, my math might be off, but like, let's just go with that. So that's how the planning project came into fruition, was the fact that we were trying to find a way for somebody to say, I'm not giving you, charging you 5,000 a month. I'm, providing you 50 hours a month, which could, of course, translate to $5,000, right? If you're, how that would work. So that's where, So then somebody asked, my foghorn leghorn, which is again is super fun to say multiple times in a row, just so you know, is expected to work 10 hours, February 15th to the 21st. What happens if it's unused? Currently nothing. We do have a plan in place to have those hours roll, right? And we're going to make that where, you know, the plan is to make that an option. So those 10 hours are allocated to them. What if they don't use those 10 hours? What then? Well, you know, some people have asked us, and again, that's in the works, a little easier said than done on this type of format, but that we would give you the option to roll them to the next month. Kind of the same thing where we were like, what if you overuse them? Do you use hours from the next week or the, you know, or something like that, you know, back into that week? So again, those are things that we're, you know, researching and working on currently. So then will folks putting in their timesheets pull from this assignment of time to the resource? They can, yes. I mean, that's kind of the plan. There are, you know, other ways to do that. And I will get to that point. I mean, we're not done. I do have, I'm going to estimate, I'm going to show you how to set up billing. I'm also going to show you how it looks in their Creative Today page, how it looks in your staff schedule screen. So you can see these allocations and stuff like that. You know, so you can, just so you know, I'm just saying there's a lot of options here. So let's see, hold on, reading the last question, and then I'm gonna show you how to do a couple other things on here. Yes, this is actually, somebody asked if this is good for retainer clients. And again, this is good for those retainers. And again, you know, I'll use that for, I'm going to say retainers in quotes, even though you can't see my quotes. It's good for if you needed to build a quote retainer type billing based off of hours instead of dollars, right? So if you sit there and say, well, I know that I'm going to provide you those 50 hours, but not, you know, and it, again, this is what we bill for those 50 hours, then you can kind of allocate those 50 hours out. You want to show that you've already committed those 50 hours to this client. You don't know where, you don't know how, maybe you don't know, you know, 100% when, but you have already committed those 50 hours to the client, you know, for that time period, for that retainer. So I'm going to move on just a little bit, because I think if we move on just a little bit, I'll answer some of the questions that are coming in just about how these hours are going to be used. And if I don't, then don't be afraid to ask me, you know, when I pause again to reiterate that question and say, no, you didn't really answer exactly what I was asking at this point in time. So just so you know, I'm just going to go and I'm going to show you a couple of cool things that this can do. So now I'm going to hit more, and you'll notice when I hit more, I do have the option to create an estimate. When I create this estimate, again, you know, we have this estimate slightly more limited than the regular project estimate, but it still allows you, again, to, you know, have an internal, you know, internal approver. We are only allowed to do a task and service estimate on this project here. And so when I click save right here, you'll notice it automatically pulls in my hours and my labor, right? That's just because it's like, well, I'm building this estimate based off of, you know, what I put in there. Now, and you'll notice, I'll just show you, because this is kind of where you really see it. We don't really have a task, but Workamajig is kind of task-based, right? Our project. So we actually do have a task in there. It's always called labor and expenses. And you'll see that I estimated, you know, I allocated these hours. So they were, you know, they were put into this estimate right here. Now, can I estimate my expenses? Of course, if you have expenses on a planning project, probably not as common, but if you have, you know, some expenses that you want to put in there, you can certainly estimate that. And then you can approve this estimate. Again, nothing really different on this, except for the fact that you are only allowed to do a task and service. You don't have any other options other than that on here. So again, now that I created my estimate, I'm going to close out of here. We're going to go back to that, I promise, but I just wanted to show you, you know, go down the line just a little bit here is, you know, look, your project settings, they're a little bit different, right? They're a little bit more limited, but you can see here that, you know, again, you have your project number, you know, if you have a project type, there is no specific project type, you know, or anything made for the planning project. If you want to create a project type called planning project, you can do that, or you can just use your typical project types there if you need to do that. You can even set a team, right? Here's my start date and complete date. Under my accounting, you know, some people were, you know, I did a previous one when this was still in beta, and that some people were saying, I really like this. I'm going to use it for some of my non-billable stuff. People are going to be, I'm going to allocate them 10 hours of non-billable stuff they do each week that, you know, does, you know, internal work and things like that. I was like, great. You know, so that you can certainly do that here. Now this is where the fun begins, just a little bit. So here's our billing method. This is definitely a little bit different than what we were, and I'm going to move this chat again. Sorry, guys. This is a little bit different than, of course, what we've seen in our previous projects. So only build a plan. So, you know, our first thought when we were building the planning project, that the planning project was going to be an island amongst itself, right? It was just going to be its own area. People were going to, you were just going to allocate those 10 hours. And, you know, and people, can you put time against a planning project? Absolutely, you can. So, right, I allocated you 10 hours a week for account management, and you did those 10 hours for this client, and they can go on this project, and we can build this project, right? And, you know, and then of course, as we thought through it and thought more and more and more, we said, oh, but what if I have those 10 hours of work and I've now specified exactly what I want them to do, and I can actually create a project for that work. So again, like, let's say those 10 hours that I have that I want them to do, I want them to go and, I don't know, create a flyer. I'm just making that up, but let's just say that that's what I want them to do. So now I have specific work that I want them to do for those 10 hours I've allocated them for that week. Well, we can create a linked project, which I'm going to get to, right? We're going to get to there. And then do we want to build that linked project, or are we still going to build based off the plan, right? So again, we wanted to be flexible on that. So billing the plan means I'm going to bill based off those 10 hours of allocation that I committed to the client. Billing the plan and project separately means I can bill the plan if I so choose to, or I can bill the linked projects that are billed to, you know, that are linked to this planning project. Okay. And if I say bill the plan and project separately, those individual projects, their billing will be managed at their level, right? So just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to build a plan. Currently, I'm getting my labor rate from the service. Right here is my billing schedule. Now you'll notice my planning project billing method. I only have two: fixed fee. Are we going to bill actuals, right? If we're billing fixed fee, which is, again, the most common, this is what we would relate to that retainer billing. We notice we don't have retainer billing because that's almost like doubling the work. What we're saying here is, if you're going to treat the planning project sort of like a retainer, then you could bill the fixed fee, and you can build a billing schedule to say, well, I want to bill them a percentage each month for however many months, you know, that is, or I want to bill a specific dollar amount, and the billing happens on the whatever date of the, you know, that I want to choose that billing. So again, like if I wanted to say, well, I'm going to bill 25%, right? And then I can say that, and I'm going to bill that on the 28th of February, right? So I can create that. And then I can, you know, I could copy that, right? And it'll do that for March, and then it will do that for April, right? So I can generate my billing schedule here, right? So now it's taking that percentage of my budget and it's creating that billing schedule. So again, if you wanted to bill $5,000 a month, like we talked about with a retainer, you can create your billing schedule based off that. Now, if I want to create, you know, and say, well, mine turned out to be those, you know, what was it, 492 hours that I committed to them. And my billing rate was, you know, my get rate from service here on my project. And that turned out to be $61,500. And I'm going to create my billing based off of that, right? Then again, I can, you know, base that based off the estimate that I created on that. But again, you can bill $5,000 a month, you can bill a percentage, you can do however you want, but you can create that billing schedule to bill that way. So hopefully that answered some questions about the billing. Now, again, bill the plan and project separately. Keep in mind that you can still create the billing schedule for the plan. So any time or, you know, any estimate put against the planning project can be billed, right? And then any work that's done on the individual projects that are linked to this one, which again, I promise you, I will link one to here and show you. You can also then, if you select that option, you can bill those as a separate kind of project, and they can be billed, you know, time and materials, fixed fee, independent of this planning project is really how that, I should say that better. So that's where I can, you know, save this information there. Okay. So that was in my project settings here. Last but not least, of course, is my team. And my team is set up, right, you know, based on what I've put into my schedule here. So you would be able to see that information. Okay. All right. I am going to just like every other project here, you know, things aren't really going to start moving forward until I put it into a status that that is active, because currently I'm in my new status. So I'm just going to click active, and you'll notice that it's now populating my, you know, my project dot and things like that. And somebody just asked, so I'm going to pause right now anyway, but somebody just asked, is the recording of the webinar going to be shared after? Absolutely. So in our help guide here, it'll be on this planning project page, but it might not be there for a little while. You can type in webinar in your search, and then you can, my chat keeps getting in the way. You can click into these past webinars and the link will show up. It usually takes us a day or two to get the link to this, to the webinar there, just because sometimes we edit out the beginning and the end because there's a lot of dead air and things like that, but then we'll put that webinar right here on the, on the help guide. All right, so then someone is asking, build projects separate from the plan. Will the project plan have a running total of what's left in the budget? Currently, no. If you are linking projects to it, we don't currently have that page where we're working on that. That again, that's something else that's in the works, is where we would, I'll compare it to a campaign where you can see kind of the top level campaign budget, and then you can see all the individual projects underneath. We currently don't have anything like that. It was something that somebody brought up at one point in time, but we hadn't gotten a lot of feedback on it, but it is a plan that we have to do. So you would not see those separate projects using up the budget if you bill separately. Okay. So let me show you, before I link a project, I'm going to show you a couple more features here. So we're going to navigate around in Workamajig just a little bit, because I want to show you kind of where this is affecting the system. And then I'm going to show you some other, features and things like that. And then we'll link a project to it. So the first thing I wanted to show you, of course, is in your Creative Today page, you'll see again that it's a task card. Now, one of the things I recommend, of course, is if you're using the planning project, especially like if you have a specific team of people who might be focusing on work that's happening in the planning project, you can show this tile view, this task card view, and it's fine, but it will show you that you have 79 days for it to be due, right? Like it doesn't really give you the idea of what work you should be doing. I prefer the tile view. The tile view will kind of show you that because remember, it's weekly buckets, right? So it shows you exactly that you have 12 hours remaining this week. You've worked 0 of that work, and then you have 12 hours remaining this week, because this is designed for that weekly bucket type view, right? So I always recommend to people that, if they're not currently using the tile view and they want to use the planning project, or, function using the planning project, this definitely relates better when using the tile view. They can use the task card view, they can use the list view. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just going to group it all together to say, hey, this thing isn't due for 79 days. All right, and so I recommend, of course, again, that tile view, but like I said, you can see it in each and every other view. It just, again, translates a lot better here. Same thing though, with your, I'll get there, staff schedule screen. You can absolutely see this information in the staff schedule screen, right? And you can look at this in the day view, or you can, again, look at it in that week view, right? And you'll be able to see how it breaks down into that week view. Okay, so these are, again, this is us saying that I've already committed this time, right? That, my Yosemite Sam is already committed for those, so many hours per day, to this client. So when we start allocating and using, work for other clients or other work outside of the planning project, then you would see the commitment that you have for that user. All right, so I've got some questions coming in. I'm going to answer them, and then I'm going to show you a reassign feature in the planning project. It's a little different than reassigning elsewhere. And then I'm going to show you how to link a project, and then I will open it up for more questions. If it doesn't reallocate unused hours or track time used to link projects. Okay, so I'll show you when I link a project, it is actually going to use the hours from the planning project for that project. But what I'm saying is, if you build a regular project, that billing doesn't go back into the planning project to say, hey, by the way, I billed 50 hour, or $50 on this regular project, so you don't have to bill that 50 on the planning. Again, they're two separate billing processes. The project status that you see on my system is just a customized project status. When I created my system for demonstration, I tried to make things extremely simple and basic, just so, again, it was pretty obvious that my project was in active status. You can create as many statuses as you need, or want, or you can create a specific one for your planning project. Let me read the last question, and then we're going to go back and reassign and link a project. So if it's not new. Okay, so somebody's asking if they go if we invoice the overage every 3 months. I mean, so again, that really comes down to your billing and how do you want to handle that. So like, again, if you set this project up to fixed fee bill, then it's set up to bill those 10 hours a month, right? You know, or 10 hours, however you set it up. If you're not really wanting to bill fixed fee, or again, you're wanting to bill those overages, I mean, I would say, look at it like a regular project and say, well, how do you typically do that? Do you bill that project time and materials or anything like that? I mean, that would be more of a calculation, because Workamajig is just going to say, well, you opted on this project to bill fixed fee, which means I opted to bill those 10 hours a week or 40 hours a month or however it was. If I'm going to bill the overage, then you would want to maybe bill in a more time and materials fashion. Or again, you would have to kind of look to see your budget versus your actuals, and then you could bill the overage on that one. So do hours on linked projects and allocated planning project hours both show up on the resource management board? Yes, but we did do a lot of work and a lot of effort to make sure that no matter how many hours, like that we're not, well, let me just show you. I'm just going to show you, we're going to link a project. So I'm just going to, because we kind of took into account, we're not double dinging the person and over allocating them in that way. So like, I'll just show you, I just wanted to go here. And if we look at our linked project, you know, there's currently no linked projects, and I can link existing projects, right? Or I can go in and I can create a project just like I would from, let's say, you know, from like any one of your templates if I wanted to kind of shortcut that. So let me just do this, and I'm just going to link a project. So again, you know, I can click into here and I created my project. And if I go into my schedule, right? And so I say, oh, okay, you know, the reason I'm linking this project is because now I told this client, right, that I gave them 10 hours a week, let's just say, and now they said, well, I want you to use those 10 hours to create a logo or something like that. So I can come in here and I can say, I'm going to add, you know, I can add my assignment, and we'll just say my Yosemite Sam, and I'm going to allocate him 3 hours to work on that task, right? So, you know, I can, you know, allocate, and I can go through it. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because this is regular project management, but, you know, just so you know, like you can go through and you can add, you know, those assignments and stuff like that, right? You know, just like you were, you know, doing a regular project here. Okay. And I can save that. And again, I can, if I want to, again, just like a regular project, I can estimate, I can set up my team, I can, you know, do my regular project settings and things like that. But now what I've done though, is I've linked this project to my planning project. Now I should show you, just so you know, if I go into project settings, sorry, kind of forgot that one right there. And again, my chat's in the way. My chat box, I guess I could make my screen smaller, but you'll see here, this is how it knows it's linked to that planning project, right? So you can actually create a regular project and link it to a planning project, right? You can do what I did, and you can, you know, just create a new project to link to that planning project. Or of course you can, you know, link, you know, from the planning project, you can link an existing project, but this is the tie-in to that planning project right there. Okay. So then what will happen if let me just go back to my Creative Today page. There we go. I was like, it's thinking a little too long for me. I was like, I hope I didn't, you know, do something wrong. But you'll see here now that it's showing that, again, here's my linked project that I created, right? And then here's my planning project. Now, if you remember before, I had 12 hours remaining that week, right? Now I have 9 because I have 3 up here. So the system is, you know, since you linked it and you've put in matching information, it was Yosemite Sam doing account management. Since you linked it and that information matches, it now says, oh, okay, I'm using 3 of those allocated hours on my regular project from my planning project. Okay, so again, it's not going to double ding the employee. It's not going to, you know, show up in resource management that they have now double the work or anything like that. We spent a lot of time and a lot of errors, you know, coming back and forth with this, but we have done this, and it works the same way in the staff schedule stream. And yes, you absolutely can have as many projects as you need to link to your planning project. We did not limit that. Okay. So that's kind of how the linked projects works, right? It's kind of like, now I know what I want to do with those. Maybe, you know, again, this does not mean that people can't put time against the planning project, right? Like some people have created planning projects and said, that's all I need, is this is kind of their account service I don't want to say dump, but their dump, where they put their account service time, or where do they put their social media planning time, or something like that, right? We don't have a checklist of things they have to do. They just know that they do that 5 to 10 hours of work that week. So they use the planning project for that. Where others might say, oh, I committed 10 hours a week to them, but now I am going to tell you specifically what I want you to do with those 10 hours, right? And that's where you can create that linked project. So you can use it as its own its own thing, its own planning project right there, or you can again link projects to it. Now, one other feature I want to show you, this is new. So if any of you were on the previous webinar for planning projects, this is new and was not on there because we did not have this feature. So if I go on here, you'll notice we're going to pick on Bugs Bunny here. You'll notice that I have this little pencil icon right here, and I'm gonna have to move my chat again. Sorry, guys. I have this little pencil icon right here. I can click this little pencil icon, and it's allowing me to reassign. Now we can't just reassign willy-nilly, right? Because what if we had already done 3 weeks worth of work, right? What do we do? So this will allow me to say, well, I'm going to reassign this work to Daffy Duck. Let's just say, but I'm only going to reassign because I realized that Bugs Bunny was on vacation, let's say in these 2 weeks in March. So what I do is I did that backwards, but let's say, no, I did that right. I'm not thinking straight in my head, but we're going to do that. I can hit save. Actually, I'm reassigning all those weeks, but you can see that where I can say now I've reassigned. So now Bugs Bunny has still those 2 weeks, right? And then my Daffy Duck now has the rest of the time, right? Because I needed Daffy Duck to do this, but not those 2 weeks because Daffy Duck was on vacation. Totally said that backwards before. But so we have a reassign feature now. We absolutely did not have that on the previous webinar that we did. So that's a new feature that we've done. It's kind of a combination of reassign and the handoff, right? Where we're handing off the work to another user. So you can pick and choose your weeks to hand off. Now currently, again, you can't pick your hours. It's going to just reassign the entire week. But again, that will not stop you from going in and selecting a week and changing information if you need to change that information, right? So I just wanted to see that. Now I wanted to show you too on Yosemite Sam's line, you'll see again that, it will show you that your 3 hours, right, are allocated to other projects. Right. So, it does show you that information. So it's showing me what my original allocation was which was 12. 3 hours of is being used on other projects. Right. So now my number is 9. So you can see that right there. Okay. So I'm trying to think. I think that's pretty much, like I said, I want you guys to know that, the planning project, of course, the big change, of course, is the schedule and the linked projects, but you still have the ability to do the other functions, the conversations, the spec sheets, the, deliverables and things like that. We do have a plan in place currently again to give you an option to roll those allocated hours, right? So again, if I didn't use up the 10 this week, so I want to give them, I only use 5, I want to roll that 5 to the next week, however that works. That is a plan in place. And currently, I'll just tell you right now that those linked projects are only going to communicate with the staff schedule or with the planning project schedule like this if both your user and your service match. We hope to have in the future the ability to say on the planning project, I just want to allocate them hours to a service. I'm going to give them 10 hours of web content development every week. I don't know who's going to do it yet. And I don't really know, again, when, but I'm just going to give them web content development. And when I create that linked project and I assign someone to web content development, that it will communicate to this planning project. That's our goal and our plan. But again, sometimes we have this idea in our head and then, the engineers kind of say that isn't going to work the way you think it's going to work. So again, those are kind of our future plans for the planning project here. But again, you can see how, that this information from the linked project works. Okay. Someone is asking again, how do you track actuals? It works just like a regular project. So when you put those, if, I allocated you 3 hours, if you put 10 hours in on that, then you have 10 hours worth of work on there, right? So your, information, again, the budget information is currently not flowing from a regular project. Linked project is not flowing back into the planning project. That again is something that we're looking into and working towards, but it isn't happening right now. So if they overwork the allocation, it's like overworking any other allocation. Okay. And again, tracking actuals, time entry. I know I didn't show you time entry, but of course the planning project will show up on your timesheets. I can show you that really quick, and then I'm done with my planning project spiel. So we'll just go back to here, and again, just like I can, come in here and I can add time. The difference is that, oops, sorry, wrong one. I was like, the difference is on this one, you'll notice on my planning project, I do not have the ability to mark my planning project as complete, right? Because remember, we only have that one task. You mark it as complete, it's going to fall off everything, right? So you do not have the ability to mark a planning project assignment as complete. It's complete when the planning project is complete. So you can add time, and you do have all the same features of time entry. You just don't have the ability as the user to mark it as complete. So you can, see this information here, and you can put your time. And somebody's asking, can you see forecasted planning project costs by month? This works with the revenue forecast tool, just like a regular project does. It takes that into account in your revenue forecasting tool. So again, if you're billing that fixed fee, and you create that billing schedule, that translates to your revenue forecast. Okay, so they're asking, can you see what projects are assigned to each user? It has a line for other projects. No, we're looking to put in a drill down into that other project hours to be able to drill down and view the information from the other projects. And that currently hasn't been completed. And again, all of this information that you're asking me, or, putting in, what I suggest to do, I will make note of it just so you know, but sometimes it's better coming from you. Don't hesitate to email support@workamajig.com with your enhancement suggestions and things like that as you start using it. It would be, and always give a use case. This is why I need to do it. This is how it would be helpful to me. I can't really, this isn't really functional to me until I'm able to do these things. And this is why. And and that's what really drives us forward, right? Because I can ask all day long just for me, myself, and say it would be great if we could do this. But as you guys start using it and you want to put in those enhancement suggestions, or, changes to this system, then put those in. Most of those come through me because I'm kind of the spearhead on this, and I always love to read them. I always love to see that you guys have some of the same and similar ideas, and again, I write them up and I give them to the engineers, and I push to see if we can get that moving forward. So please don't hesitate, once you start using this, to provide that feedback, good or bad. I'm going to take it, right? And we're going to take and see what we can do with that. So let's see. Someone was just asking, a support and maintenance project that they charge a fixed fee to the clients. The team addresses support issues as they come up. Is planning project better suited than standard project for this purpose? It could be, absolutely. I mean, again, it really comes down to if you need to schedule that time, like specific time. But if it's just things that pop in, like, hey, you know what, we bill the client, we give them this much time a week to do these things, right? The support and maintenance of their websites and stuff like that. And, and the person just goes, I did 2 hours of that. I'm going to put it against that planning project and put in my time entry. I make my comment. I just updated their website. I just did this, that, whatever. Then absolutely the planning project can work for that. Like, think about a lot of people. Sometimes I see them having projects in the system that their tasks are literally January, February, March, April, May, June, July, right? Planning, you can substitute that and use the planning project for, for the, to replace a project like that. Correct. Someone asked if I set up a monthly or quarterly billing schedule for a flat dollar amount, I could essentially use this as retainer billing. Absolutely. That was kind of the idea. I know it seems silly that we did this all to kind of not really replace retainer, but to provide you with a way to do retainers, but by hours instead of dollars, right? Well, dollars always relate to, or hours always relate to dollars. And we took out the retainer billing because, again, we find that the billing schedule gives you more flexibility. Because also what people told us, this is the feedback we got, is, well, in my retainer, I like to bill, $5,000 up front and then $2,000 here or $1,000 here, right? Because my retainer fluctuates. Well, in Workamajig, retainers don't fluctuate. So the planning project is a way for you to build that information and fluctuate your billing if you need to. And somebody asked, can you assign to-dos to do a planning project? That one hurts me just a little bit. No, no, you cannot. I tried. I fought the good fight. I was told that to-dos are not going to currently happen in the planning project. We do have conversations and deliverables and things like that, but currently no to-dos. Okay. I'm going to leave it open. You guys have asked a lot of good questions. If I missed anyone's question, I'm sorry. My chat kind of scrolls a little bit. So if I missed it, I absolutely apologize. You can throw it in there again if you want to, or again, you can always email support@workamajig.com with that question. And, you know, and ask your account manager. If you want that question to come to me, you can just say, hey, send this question to Ruth because she missed me on the webinar, and I'll be happy to, you know, email you back with that question. And of course, if there's ever a time, if we didn't cover something on this webinar, if there's more information that you need, you can always set up an individual call to get training that's more specific to your agency, right? You know, this is, I don't want to say it was totally generic, but it's a little bit generic, right? This is just basically how the system works. But if you need to talk to your account manager to get some different ideas or things like that, then don't hesitate to set up that call. Somebody's asking, how can I best leverage this as a resource allocation tool for a group of developers? I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, again, you know, if you need to allocate the work for them, you know, you can, what some people are doing is they would create multiple planning, instead of one planning project, you can create multiple planning projects, right? So instead of having, you know, one with all of the resources in one, you can create multiple planning projects. I don't know the best way to answer that, just because I think we need to have, that would be more of a back and forth conversation so I could better understand what you're looking for the system to do. So that might be a time that you might want to set up that call with your account manager so that they can get a little bit better understanding of what you're trying to accomplish and then work with you to create the planning project that way. All right, so I'm going to, again, leave it open for just another minute or two. Again, thank you very much for joining my planning project webinar. I look forward to hearing any feedback from you on what we can do with the planning project to make it an even better tool and, you know, and useful to all of you. So I look forward to those emails, support@workamajig.com, and you guys have a fantastic day.